from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
All right, folks, we're privileged to be joined by a name and a face and a voice that you are all very familiar with. CBS special correspondent and Emmy Award-winning TV and radio host, Rita Cosby. Rita, so good to see you.
Great to see you, my old friend.
Yeah,
this is
we go back a long way.
Love this.
And these days you're at my old stomping grounds, WABC Radio in New York. For those folks watching here in New York, they could hear you every day at 5?
At 5 o'clock, and it's The Ride Home with Pat Kiernan and Rita Cosby, and doing latest, greatest news. And boy, is there a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
and I love it. It's wonderful.
There's always so much to do. Before we get to Iraq and of course the great book Quiet Hero about your father, you interviewed the Pope. And I guess even if I weren't in the business, I'd want to know, besides what it was like to meet the Pope, which I will ask you, but how do you get to interview the Pope?
You pray, and you never know. It's so funny, even when you get to the moment where you're in front of the Pope, his handlers said, and there's a lot of handlers, I've covered White House, there was more handlers around the Pope than there was around the White House, Steve. And even when you get there, they said, we don't know if he's going to speak. He knows you're there. We know the position you're in. If he feels like speaking, he'll speak. If he's not, we can't tell the Pope what to do, of course. And so first I had put in a request, and then finally I got this message saying, you've been accepted.
Come on down.
But then you still never know till that moment, literally to the second before. And the most interesting thing is right before he's walking up, his guy said to me, if you can speak Spanish, that would help, because of course he's from Argentina.
And you do.
And I do. It's not my native tongue, but so suddenly 30 seconds before I'm thinking, how do I talk about Mideast peace in Spanish? Luckily I remembered it.
And the interview, is that, like you said, they don't know if he'll talk. In other words, was it a sit down? Did you have time with him, or you just had to ask him a couple of questions on the fly? How'd that work?
I had a couple questions on the fly, which is a big deal because the Pope never says anything. And what happened was they put me in a position where they said, we'll try to get him to come over and say hi. And then if he's talkative, use that moment and ask him whatever you'd like. And I knew it was right before the Vatican Peace Summit, and of course huge news where he brought together Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Israeli President, Shimon Peres. So here the two of them were meeting with him, with the Patriarch of Greece, all of those folks meeting together. So it was this incredible moment. And so I knew, okay, it's a couple days before. If I have just a few seconds, ask him. And as soon as I started talking in Spanish, his eyes lit up. He started answering me, and I kept rapid firing, asking questions.
Was there a tape recorder?
There was a recorder, and I had the whole recording, and we started going back and forth in Spanish. And he was answering half Spanish, half Italian, ironically.
That's amazing.
And then I kept talking about, well, what do you suggest about the peace process? What role does prayer play? Questions that I thought obviously would be something that would be special to him. And not only was he obviously, I think, excited to see, here's this blonde, green-eyed gal who, is not Spanish by descent, asking questions and speaking. He also, you could tell, was so passionate about playing a role in the peace process. You could tell I definitely interested him because it's an area that he really, clearly cares deeply about. And it wasn't just a dog and pony show. I think this meeting that took place is just the beginning, and really he would truly like to play a substantive role in Mideast peace, which was very neat. And if, gosh, I think as someone who's covered a lot of the Mideast, maybe the Pope can pull some strings and make it happen.
Be a lot of string pulling.
There'll be a lot of strings.
But good, a nice effort on his part, and kudos. That is just fantastic.
Thank you. I had to pinch myself.
I'm sure.
Steve, because,
I'm sure.
You have this chance to meet, and I've been blessed to meet a lot of people, and I rarely get overwhelmed. You've known me a long time.
And once in a while you do, but for me it's a Donald Rumsfeld, or it's an iconic sports figure, but the Pope is a whole nother plane.
It was amazing. After I walked away, and after I had this wonderful back and forth, great conversation. First of all, everybody in the place was like, "You talk to the Pope." I mean, it was like nowhere could I walk into Italy without.
Did you kneel, kiss his?
No, I held his hand, and we talked. And then first he blessed my rosaries. I had a beautiful little pillow. First, it was a personal moment for me, and he blessed my rosaries, blessed my father's war medal, which was very special, and that almost was enough. Enough as personally. And then I said, no, wait, I've got to ask him these questions, and we began this wonderful conversation back and forth. And everybody was on the jumbotrons, was on television. Everybody was talking about it. But I was just so honored to be speaking with him, and he was so personable and so affable, so focused. I mean, he made me feel like I was the only person in the room, clearly took the time, clearly cared. And after he walked away, Steve, I pinched myself. I definitely got welled up, and I thought, I can't believe I just had this conversation
That is-
with the Pope
that
about
is
Mideast
amazing.
peace.
That is just amazing.
I was just deeply moved too, just personally as a Catholic too.
We only have a couple of minutes left or less. Quiet hero, your dad, World War II veteran. We just had D-Day. And very quickly, I was in Texas the other day, and before we boarded our plane home, they announced that before we board, they put the coffin of a flag-draped coffin of a World War II vet who died the other day on the anniversary of D-Day.
Wow.
Everyone stood there. Nobody complained, oh, we can't board. It took a long time for the body to arrive, and everybody stood looking out the window watching in dead silence. That said something about America and the respect that the World War II generation and those who fought still have.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful to see. And that's why I did this book as a tribute to my dad and to so many heroes. And my dad never shared the story, Steve, until just a few years ago. I discovered this old suitcase with mementos in it.
Yeah.
And when I found the story that I had someone who was a real hero in my own family, not only did I feel like I wanted to share the story about my dad, I wanted to share the story of how lucky we are as Americans, because my dad was 90 pounds and 6 feet tall when he escaped from POW camp. One of the more healthy guys, Polish resistance fighter, and literally was in the woods when an American plane came by and saved him and told him he had 15 miles to walk and he was free.
Wow.
And my dad came to a riverbed. There were American GIs on the other side, my dad on the other, and my dad couldn't even speak English. He was Polish, remember? And they said, your nightmare's over, you're free. And so when my dad shared the story, I wanted to do it to remind everybody of how lucky we are to be in this country.
The book is a few years old by now, but I'm sure you could find it, folks. Quiet Hero. It is a very touching and moving event documented by Rita Cosby. So good to see you.
And by the way, part of the proceeds go to troops and their families. So
very
that's
important.
the best reason
Thank
of all.
you. Great seeing you. Rita Cosby, if you're in New York, listen to her on WABC. We're coming back. Sonia Nasri Cole.